Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A very warm welcome to all the dignitaries of the dais and the distinguished panelists, as well as our delegates who are attending this session on the carbon market, unlocking the carbon markets and its role of recycling in circular economy. This session will be dwell upon more on the carbon credit mechanism, carbon funding, and its role in achieving the net zero goals of the Indian economy. With this, I would like to call upon the moderator of these sessions, Mr. Yashodan Ramteke. Mr. Yashodan Ramteke is the moderator of this session. Yashodan is currently served as the Assistant Vice President Metamaterial Clusters Markets, where he heads the carbon business unit and specializes in automotive circularity, driving initiatives that focus on reducing carbon emission and promoting sustainable practices within the automotive industry. With this, may I request Yashodan give a big round of applause to all the. Over to you, Yashodan. Yeah.
Thank you, Pramodji. We are starting the session after the lunch, so I hope everybody is attentive. So I'll just call my panelists. Mr. Rohit Garg. Mr. Rohit Garg is the Director of NatureFix India. Mr. Rohit Garg is an energy and climate change professional having 12 plus years of experience in developing climate change projects in developing countries. He has also worked in management of sustainable cities project in India and sustainable transport projects with Ministry of Urban Development. I call my next panelist, Mr. Shouvik Bhattacharjee. Mr. Shouvik is an associate director at the Resource Efficiency and Governance Division of TERI. He is also visiting faculty at the TERI School of Advanced Studies. He is a member of BIS Committee on Environmental Management, and he is the coordinator of South Asia Regional Center of Excellence for Sustainable Consumption under UNEP. I call my next panelist, Mr. Harsh Chaudhary. Mr. Harsh Chaudhary is the co-founder and CEO of Centra World. Mr. Harsh Chaudhary has an experience of more than 17 years in industrial sustainability. He holds a degree in electrical engineering and is a certified business sustainability professional. He is experienced on a wide array of topics including GHG accounting, decarbonization strategies, industrial efficiency and climate policy, renewable energy and carbon credits. I call my last panelist now, Mr. Sanmit Ahuja. Mr. Sanmit Ahuja is the Managing Director of Bharat Technology and Impact Accelerator. Mr. Sanmit is a major proponent of sustainable development and increasing role of emerging markets in the global economy. He is currently the Director of Bharat Technology and Impact Accelerator. Thank you everybody for joining us. We all know the role of environment plays in our lives, and India has a net zero goal of 2070. With the environmental goal in mind, India has come up with its sustainability market, that is the Indian CCTS. India announced the Indian carbon market in June 2023, and we have seen India taking good strides towards this initiative. I'll just call Mr. Rohit Garg just to start the presentation on the current status of carbon markets on the global scale as well as India's role in it. Thank you.
So, everybody, before starting this session, I would like to talk about how the carbon credit can be generated and what are the market mechanisms, those are active globally, and how it will be get implemented in India, and what are the new mechanism which is going to be coming here in India, including the compliance as well as the voluntary mechanism. Those are already active at a global level. So, in the starting of this session, so basically the carbon credit divided into two parts. One is the carbon allowances and one is the carbon credits. So usually the carbon allowances are the ETS based market, in which these are the compliance credits. So we call it the carbon allowances. And the carbon credits are generated in the voluntary market or in the compliance voluntary schemes, mostly under the VERA, Gold Standard and the CDM schemes. So if I'm talking about the carbon credit, it's divided into two parts. One is the voluntary carbon credit market, and another one is a compliance carbon credit market. In the voluntary scheme, there are multiple standards at a global level. So the overall overall carbon market divided into two parts. One is the voluntary market as well as the compliance market. So at a global level, the compliance schemes are yet to evolve in the form of a Paris Agreement implementation. And the voluntary schemes are already active at a global level, like the VERA, gold standards, or Carbano. There are multiple standards in the market quite active, and now everyone, all the projects, those are getting developed in India, it's under the voluntary scheme nowadays. But gradually, the compliance market will also come in picture in 2025. The government is also developing their own mechanism. At a global level, there are some new mechanisms are also coming on a compliance scheme. The UN is also coming up with the 6.4, Article 6.4 compliance scheme. So that will evolve in 2025. I'm hoping that it will get evolved in mid of 2025. So in this particular slide, we mapped down some of the global schemes. Those are already active at a global level. And these schemes are working quite, coming up with a great regulations. But in terms of the trading, the EU ETS market is the most advanced market these days, in which the tradings are happening at a good pricing level. Whereas the other schemes are also there, the Chinese ETS are there, South African local market is there, but the trading, in terms of the volume of the trading, it's not that much volumes are getting traded in those particular schemes. But these schemes are already active and running successfully. So apart from the ETS market, there are some taxation mechanisms are also running at a global level. So we mapped down here. Now these taxation mechanisms are not quite successful, so it's keep on changing, and these mechanisms are also getting converted into the form of the Article 6 mechanism in the coming years. Recently, the Colombia also implemented in 2021-2022, they've implemented the carbon tax. So now they converted, they withdraw those particular taxation, and now they're thinking of to change it to the Article 6 compliant credit scheme in the coming years. In India, there is a green credit mechanism, which is started by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change under the LIFE initiative. And they listed on some of the technologies in it, like we discussed more in the session today about the green credit mechanism. It listed on some technology like the tree plantation, waste management, sustainable agriculture activities, and the mangrove restoration project. So CCTS market was launched in 2023, and this is a carbon credit trading mechanism was launched by the Bureau of Energy Efficiency and the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And then the main motive of this particular mechanism was to come up with an idea or the platform where all the designated consumer sector, those are the part of the PAT mechanism earlier, and the REC mechanism that come up with at a common platform and start doing the transaction in a form of carbon credit. So that India will also try to map it at how much emissions are happening in the different designated consuming sector. So they come up with this idea in June 2023. Now it's there is a lot of development of already happened in this CCTS market. And last week, this week, end of last week, they come up with the new methodologies for these sectors, which will cover by Yashodhan in the coming slides. And this market will be fully launched by this year, and the offset mechanism will start trading the credits this year. So these are some standard at a global level on the voluntary schemes like VERA, Gold Standard, Puro Earth, Global Carbon Council, Carbano, and ICR. So these are the standards, those are already approved by the global forums, and the trading of the voluntary credits are already happening in these particular forum, in this particular voluntary standards. And the prices are varies from a standard to standards, and the carbon credit prices specifically are varies from standard to standard, and based on the technology type and the country from which these particular projects are getting developed in these standards. If I'm developing a project in India from a renewable energy in these standards, and someone is developing a similar project in Bhutan or in Bangladesh, so the prices of those particular credits will be much higher than in Bangladesh as compared to the India. So based on the prices mechanism, based on the monitoring mechanism, the prices of credits varies in these particular standards. And all these standards are coming up with their own guidance document and the own requirement of which particular type of project will be eligible, which particular type of project will be able to trade it or not. So they are coming up with all those guidance documents. So especially if I'm talking about the current structure of the voluntary schemes at a global level, it's come up with the billions of demands across the globe, and there is a lot of tradings are happening. But we have seen that there is a demand constraint from a buyer side for the voluntary credits. But it's a specific demands are coming on the nature-based solution credits, removal credits, even on the waste recycling credits are also coming in the demand by the different buyers in Europe and US. So these are some price trends of the voluntary credits. As you can see that in 2022 the prices were on a very high side, and it's keep on declining on a regular basis on the voluntary credits. So now I would like to invite Yashodhan to take up the Article 6 mechanism, as well as what they are doing, IMMCM is doing on the end of life of the vehicles, and how the emission reduction can be achieved from the vehicle recycling.
Yeah, thank you, Rohit. Thank you for the introduction to the carbon markets. Now, this is very interesting, where we have been listening to a lot of COPs where the global carbon market was trying to get shaped. And in the last COP, which happened in Azerbaijan, finally Article 6.2 and 6.4 got operationalized. The demand was for $1 trillion of fund to come from the developed nations to the developing nations, but the kind of commitment which came right now is $300 billion. But India is a major player in this market. When the UN CDM was active, India had the second largest share in terms of the market. There are some estimates which say that nearly $10 billion of credits were traded on the market only from the Indian side. And we expect under the Article 6.2 and 6.4 mechanism, for the next 5 years, we are expecting around $15 billion upwards of money to come in just through this mechanism. So Article 6 is divided into two sectors, Article 6.2 and Article 6.4. 6.2 basically is just a cooperative approach between two countries. So it is a bilateral agreement between, say, a host country and the buying country. India currently is in very advanced stages with some countries which we have known from time to time. And so Japan is one country where this Article 6.2 is in a very advanced talks. The kind of, the way it is structured is there is no international oversight. Only the two countries have to decide on the kind of methodology on the credits which they need to buy, and it can directly be transmitted. The credits which are under this Article 6.2 approach are called as ITMOs, Internationally Traded Mitigation Obligations. Article 6.4 differs from Article 6.2 in the sense that it is open to all parties. It is not a bilateral agreement between host and the buying country. Article 6.4 also is subject to international rules and oversight. There is a committee which is being formed in UN, a supervisory body, which will come frame the regulations for Article 6.4. What we expect is it will be more or less a transition from the CDM, which the earlier CDM market was running. It also includes tracking of credits for other international mitigations. The Article 6.4, as I told, 6.2 are called as ITMOs. The Article 6.4 credits will be called as A6.4 emission reductions. India came up with a list which was published. These are the sectors which will be covered under Article 6.2. So most of them are renewable energy projects. So we have green hydrogen. India has also formed a green hydrogen national committee for green hydrogen. Then we have something for energy utilization. There is, again, for alternate material, there is green ammonia. And again, there are activities like carbon, which are very new, which are carbon capture, utilization, and storage. So this is the current list of Article 6.2 and 6.4, the sectors where the credits will be applicable. So this is a typical step of generating carbon credits. So how do you generate carbon credits? So the typical step consists of first the feasibility study of the project. You need to do a project study, and then you need to also do something which is called as project description and project writing. So there is something called as PDD, which is created by the project developer. The PDD goes through a validation process, which is typically a third party which is appointed by the body which registers the project. Once the validation is done, the registration of the project happens on the standard. Once the project is registered and validated, then starts the monitoring and reporting process. So this monitoring and reporting is very important. This is called as the MRAI, which forms the base of the mitigation outcomes. So currently what we have seen is, now when we are talking about material recycling and material recycling being a very big contributor, the current list of Article 6.2 and 6.4 does not consider material circularity in terms of its list. But what we suggest is that under the last COP, they had emphasized on integrating circular economy and sustainable consumption under the NDCs. So under the NDCs, if circular economy is considered, we are proposing to have change in the 6.2 list, where they should include waste disposal and including circular waste under the waste disposable sector. We have just a case study of how this can be done in a very right way. So we have done one case study of what end-of-life vehicle waste can do. So end-of-life vehicle waste is a mix of all waste. It has steel, it has plastic, it has glass, it has e-waste. So we did a kind of case study of what is the kind of savings which can happen through the end-of-life project. Again, after 6.2, 6.4, under the Indian carbon markets, under the Bureau of Energy Efficiency came up with a notification on 20th September 24, where they came up with the list of CCTS schemes, and under the list, waste handling and disposable is already considered. So waste circularity projects can happen, but we want to have waste circularity as a subsection under the waste handling and disposable, where the circular economy or waste circularity guys, recyclers can also get the benefit of carbon market through the Indian CCTS. So currently around 5-6 days back, the BE came up with the list of methodologies which will be adopted for the offset market. This is the current list which has been published. So this is under the public comments period now. The public comments period is going to end on 30th of January. And this is the list under which the Indian project developers can develop projects under the Indian CCTS mechanism. So currently, as I told you, there are a lot of projects globally which are being registered under the waste mechanism. So typically there are two methodologies which talk about material circularity. One is UN CDM AMS3AJ and second is AMS3BA. AMS3AJ talks about material circularity from solid waste and replacing virgin material by the secondary material. AMS3BA talks about material circularity from e-waste. And we have seen a lot of these projects being there on global registries. So under AMS3BA, there was one project which was registered from India, that was from Atero Recycling, which was registered from a crediting period from 2013 to 2023. So Vera and other standards which Rohit has also mentioned has a lot of projects in material circularity. So we have projects on aluminum recycling, plastic recycling, which are there throughout the carbon projects globally. So just to show you a case study of what is the kind of carbon savings which can be enabled if you are recycling a vehicle. So as I was telling you, a vehicle or an end-of-life cars basically has different type of materials like ferrous, non-ferrous, and this is a typical composition of the material. So if you see, and on the right hand, on the left hand side, we have also given the carbon footprints for the virgin steel. If you see the global, this thing says that for the steel, 1 ton of steel produces nearly 1.27 tons of CO2. But if you are recycling the material, the steel, same steel, using electric arc furnace as well as the from the recycled material, only 0.4 to 0.5 tons of CO2 is emitted. So that the reduction is there quite huge. So this is the formula for 1 ton of vehicle. What we calculated was nearly 0.5 tons of savings are enabled through a calculation of all the materials. So this material is your ferrous, non-ferrous, that is aluminium, plastics, glass. So all of this will give you a saving of around 0.5 to 0.6 tons for 1 ton of material. So as I'm telling about ELVs, it can be done for all the subsequent sectors. So the calculations are based on the UN CDM AMS3 AJ and BA. Again, this is a value chain product. So so this will be very beneficial for automobile sectors as well as steel sector, because steel sector, the circularity is not there. So circularity, ALVs are a very good source of promoting circularity. So steel sector can also benefit if the carbon credits benefits can be given to the vehicle recyclers. So we all know that if we continue to consume the resource at the current rate, we would need second earth. We are already at the position where we have already exhausted all the resources. So for a sustainable future, we need to have circular economy, and that is very important. With this, I would like to end my presentation. Thank you. Shogi, you have been instrumental with a lot of government bodies, and you see circular economy as a very good opportunity. I just want to ask you, the India's updated NDCs emphasize on reducing emissions intensity and promoting sustainable resource use. How can recycling be positioned within India's carbon market framework to contribute to these targets?
If you look at India, I don't know how many of you are aware, it's the second largest material consumer after China. So China consumes close to 40 billion tons of materials, and that includes biomass, fuels, non-metallic minerals, and metals. So India stands a distant second, close to around 8 to 9 billion metric tons, out of which the construction materials form a significant share. In the metal space, what we have seen between 1990 and 2010, we consume around 3 billion tons of metals. But if we see the kind of projections between 2010 and to the 2030, it's going to be almost 5 times what we had consumed between 1990 and 2010. So it's almost like around 11 billion tons. Now, if we talk about producing these 11 billion tons of metals from the virgin sources, you can understand the implication and to what extent it may have an impact on India's achievement on the energy and the emission intensity. And that's where recycling comes as a major role towards the decarbonization process. So as you mentioned in your presentation that, say, for example, steel, if we recycle, it can reduce overall emission by almost 60%. In case of aluminium, it can be as high as 90 to 95%. For example, copper, it can be somewhere again between 60 to 65%. Now, the mechanisms that we have at this moment in India, to a large extent, it has been instrumental in reducing or creating an incentive for the end-of-life management of all the materials, which is the EPR. It had been instrumental and successful, but I still see that there is a lot of opportunity for the carbon market to kind of meet this gap between what it is currently happening and what is kind of desired in the form of a full commercial viability. And if we look at the development, particularly in 2022 December, when the Electricity Amendment Act of 2022 came into existence with the introduction of a full functional carbon market by the year 2026. So it's a very good direction, and we do have the Ministry of Power who is going to identify the obligated entities, and that obligated entities would be identified based on in consultation of the Bureau of Energy Efficiency, and there is a National Steering Committee for Indian Carbon Market which has been constituted. So till date, we have around 10 sectors, 6 sectors in phase 1 and 4 sectors in phase 2, of which 12 methodologies for 6 sectors in the phase 1 have already been identified and you had already listed out. So that's where I feel personally that the momentum is already there. It's all about how we are able to bring in the recycling sector's activities here, right from waste to energy, to industrial symbiosis as well as material recovery, which would again address the larger question which I just started saying, that how we are going to meet this material or the metal demand, and to what extent secondary material can contribute towards meeting that demand, and at the same time we are able to do it in a more sustainable and environmental friendly manner.
Thank you, Shouvik ji. Any idea of the kind of difference there is between the unorganized market and organized market in terms of price differential? Yeah.
So it would be to the tune of around maybe 10 to 15, you mean to say the dollars, the carbon market, the price of the carbon?
Yes.
Well, it would be somewhere between like around at least 10 to $15, if not more.
Okay, the Indian CCTS which is coming.
Yes.
So the,
Yeah.
thank you. Next, I would like to go to Sanmit. Sanmit, you have been working in the private sector and you are accelerator. Can you just tell us what role can private capital play in accelerating the scaling of recycling initiatives through carbon finances and other mechanisms?
Thanks, Yashodhan. So I'll start by answering sort of a macro issue. I mean, the topic of the session says unlocking carbon markets, which sort of implies that these alone would fund the entirety of the project, right? Which is kind of a misnomer and a misleading statement, important nonetheless. So the world emits 55, 57 gigatons every year. Now, IMF states that for us to reach the 1.5 degree goal, the price of carbon should be a minimum of $85 a ton. Oh, sorry, the 2 degree goal. For 1.5 degree, the price of carbon should be at $200 a ton. At 57 gigatons a year, that's $11 trillion, right? Is where we need to be. The compliance market worldwide are less than $1 trillion. So there's a 10x differential where the price of carbon is today and where it needs to be. And that's the fundamental point of failure, right? So we are not addressing the big elephant in the room, that how do you fund, who pays for climate change, right? Everyone is polluting, everyone's blaming at each other, everyone's shouting at each other, and that's the deadlock. And it's not going to get any better based on what happened in US 10 days ago, right? So what are the levers that are available to us? The one, we talk of 6.2 and 6.4, we don't talk of 6.8. A lot of people don't know what 6.8 is. And 6.8 is knowledge transfer, technology transfer, risk reduction mechanisms. Right? These are levers available to us today, and we are not utilizing those levers. So what we do in our accelerator, we do the first of a kind project. There's no benchmark, there's no precedence. You go to the government, you go to the investors, everyone says, show me where the first one is working. Right? If your house is on fire and you need to douse it, you'll do whatever it takes. You don't wait for the first one in the neighboring street so we have to find those solutions. So 6.8 is where I would put our energies on, which is use the levers available to us today. So we've brought more than 60 odd technologies in climate sector to India. And every one of them, we have reduced the cost of the technology implementation by 70%, minimum, right? Now, why is so much fat built in these technologies? I don't blame where those technologies are invented. They're invented in Norway, in Germany, in Japan. These are small markets compared to India, right? We think scale, right? So they design the techno-economic models for smaller marketplace. We think scale, and that's where the mismatch is. And that's why we were able to reduce the cost of technology by 60 to 70%. Then you work on risk management, right? If you bring proper regulatory frameworks and an enabling environment and it reduces the risk, all of us who are in the finance sector knows, well, risk equates cost of money. Lower the risk, lower the cost of money. And the final lever available to us is actually the cost of capital. Blended finance is what's available. Now, if you do all of this, then the price of carbon is $25 to $30 a ton. Then you are within a striking distance of achieving bankability, investability, right? So what can we do? Look at 6.8 first, while the world's negotiating 6.2 and 6.4. 6.8 is available to you today. Let's start acting on that.
Yeah, that is a good thought, something which is very unique. Thanks, Anmit. Harsh, I would like to come to you. We have spoken about frameworks like CCTS 6.2. We have talked about private capital. But at the same time, there's something which is there, which is called as traceability. All the markets are, the carbon markets are infamous for not being very opaque and not being very traceable, double counting, and these issues are coming. So with India exploring the opportunities under Article 6.2, CBAM also coming in, what role do you see of digital MRVs playing in the support system, specifically for recyclers? Because in India, the recycling is more of a unorganized sector. And how do you see the traceability and the traceability from the organized sector? And what role will the digital MRV play here?
Thank you, Yash. The question about traceability is, I think, one of the most fundamental for the whole topic of carbon credits. Currently, the entire carbon market is facing something called a trust deficit. We all saw what happened last year with a company like Shell, who's so well renowned for being robust in their systems, and they face so much of negative PR for over-reporting how much of emissions they could reduce. And there are numerous cases like that. I'm just naming Shell because it's a known company. But there are numerous instances of that happening. A lot of that happens in agroforestry credits. And it'll happen in metal recycling credits also. Now, the big question is around how do we bring this trust back, right? Because without this trust, the value of carbon credits is pointless. Now, we are at a point where we have so much new technology which has become available to us. And in our working with so many steel companies around the world, we have now put into practice about 3 technologies and their use cases, which will make the MRV process much more trustworthy. The number one part is around the use of AI. Now, numerous use cases of AI, let me point to one of them. I'll explain this with a little anecdote. A couple of months back, I was talking to one of the large technology players. I won't take the name, but it's a large technology player out of the West Coast in the US. And they are building global capability centers in India. And somehow in all their tendering process, they have this thing that we must use steel from the primary route. We don't want secondary steel, right? And this notion itself, the Ministry of Steel has tried to move away from and everything. But this notion still remains. And we went and asked them that why, what's really the reason behind? I mean, you can do all the spectro tests and everything to prove that the quality is good. But they came back and said that, oh, we don't know what kind of scrap is actually going inside. Right? And this is where it came out and said, okay, the discussion with them was, supposing we are able to tell you exactly what scrap is going inside, and we are able to get imaging from the scrapyard, and using AI, using computer vision, we can actually tell you what kind of scrap is going inside and what is the formulation of this. They said, yes, something like this is going to work. It will give us much more trust, much more confidence. That is one example use case of AI. Another one is around blockchain. Now, everybody's heard of blockchain, but to put it simply, it's a ledger. It's a ledger in which you are noting down events as they have happened, and once written down, it cannot be erased or modified. To put this into the concept of recycling and steel manufacturing, let's follow the regular supply chain. There is an end user who has sent let's say a vehicle for scrapping. There is a scrap player who's processed it, aggregated it, then sold it to a steel player. Steel player has done some secondary processing on it, has gone to another player, then finally through traders it has gone to an end consumer. Typically in any route of steel manufacturing or scrap steel, the product will change hands about anywhere between 6 to 10 times. And at each step you are adding in some amount of carbon emissions. It is in nobody's interest to report their right numbers at this point, unless there is somebody who's actually checking it. Now, without this, you can easily go back and alter what your predecessor has emitted, which is getting counted in your carbon emissions. Now, blockchain prevents that from happening. Where at each step, let's say whoever is the scrap processor, whatever their emissions are, whatever their corporate carbon footprint or their product carbon footprint has put in, that goes into the blockchain, which nobody can erase. It goes to the next step, that number comes up again. And it keeps following this trail, and each block of data which is coming from each emission points goes on to the cloud. So that's how the blockchain gets formed. This is something that we have piloted now with Emirates Steel in Abu Dhabi. And it's gaining a lot of traction because a lot of their customers can see that the data that I'm now getting cannot be altered. Nobody is going to mess around with it. And obviously, blockchain comes at a cost. And at the end of the day, as sir, you rightly said, who's going to pay for climate change? There has to be somebody who's going to be able to pay for that technology. Transparency is also not free. It comes at a price. So we also have to find the right consumers and the right customers who are actually willing to pay for that transparency. As they say, there's no free lunch, right? And finally, there's the part around digital tracking and accounting. Now, every consumer of steel will want to know that the product they have bought, let's say they've bought some structured steel, they will want to know what are the emissions associated with my product. I don't care about who's produced it and their overall corporate emissions and how many diesel vehicles they're driving around. I want to know that what are the embodied emissions in this particular product. That's what they're concerned about, because that gets counted for them. Now, this is where data really comes in. If you're able to calculate emissions on a heat by heat basis, let's say you're running your scrap through an induction furnace route. If you're able to capture emissions on a heat by heat basis and then link it to your customer order, each unique customer order will have its unique carbon footprint. And when something like that happens, you have the flexibility. Supposing you have a customer who's willing to pay 10-15% extra for your green steel, you have the ability to then front load more scrap into that particular heat. What is that? How is that going to help? You actually have now realistic and heat by heat control on which customers deserve that amount of extra scrap and which don't. Because clearly scrap is a very, very prized commodity. And I don't think we should be wasting it on consumers or customers who are not able to monetize it or who are not able to appreciate it. So to me, the three use cases, one around the use of AI, one around blockchain, and the other one is, very simply put, digital heat by heat level tracking of your emissions. And just one more thing to add to that. Yesterday we were in conversation with Ministry of Power for CCTS, and one of the questions that I'd asked them was that, what do you think, you have so many now, 135 steel companies that you will have to put through this verification process under CCTS. Under this Green Star rating, you have 2,000 or 3,000 steel companies. How are you going to validate it and ensure that they're actually, showing you the correct values? And the very clear answer from them was, we have to get into AI-based solutions. So this is really how this space is going to evolve. We will see over the next 2 to 3 years, many validations, verifications actually happening through AI.
Thank you, Harsh. I think this was a very important point, how digital MRV will play a lot of role, and thank you for your understanding of how AI and blockchain will play a very major role. Rohit, I would like to come to you now. With your experience in sustainable cities and energy efficiency, how do you see the urban recycling and the recyclers being integrated into the Indian carbon market?
So currently, in the Indian carbon market, the CCTS which is coming up, they are not considering the recycling sector as of now. But they are in a process of considering this particular type of project activity as well, which is also quite important from the waste management perspective as well as from the global demand perspective. So this is under the discussion with the CCT, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, that how these waste recycling sector will be included. Even though in the current 6.2 and 6.4 list, if you go through that, they have included the CVG sector over there. Whereas these waste recycling sectors are not intensely, they have included it, but we are in discussion with the Bureau of Energy Efficiency to consider this particular sector as well, because there's a lot of emission is happening in this sector which is untapped, and and they required a carbon financing support as well. If these sectors get tapped, then they will get an additional support in terms of the carbon financing, and we can evolve these sectors in the coming years.
Thank you, Rohit. Shauvikji, I would like to ask you the same question in terms of Article 6. We see in India a lot of foreign players like Toyota, Honda, Suzuki has a lot of presence in India. And recycling, again, is part of their value chain. How can this, under Article 6, you think, this global conglomerates can help Indian recyclers be able to give the carbon finance?
Yeah, so I think Sanmeet has already talked about the relevance of Article 6, and within it we do have 6.2, 6.4 and 6.8, which is the cooperation, and also we see the relevance of cooperation very strongly embedded in the Sustainable Development Goals, goal number 17. Now coming to Article 6 and these two articles, 6.2 and 6.4. So when we talk about the 6.2, that's wherein countries like India needs to kind of leverage very strongly and forge partnerships with countries that are aiming to in fact achieve their NDCs through the internationally transferable mitigation outcomes, the ITMOs which you just talked about. So these ITMOs are a very effective mechanisms which happens between two countries. And when do we see the investments of countries from say the far east like Japan to even far west in the US, wherein we see investments coming in. So there creates a bilateral opportunity to trade carbon credits with those countries. It's easy because first of all, you already have those sectors listed within your broader list of activities to be covered. And then you need to just kind of facilitate that arrangement of trade with the participating entity of your partner country. But going beyond, which is even more interesting, is the Article 6.4, which is talking about international carbon crediting mechanism. And the best part of it is like it has a supervisory body, as many of you may be knowing. And that supervisory body is responsible for not only identifying the methodologies, but also approving the methodologies. So there might be a lot of emerging methodologies which are coming up. And it's a good opportunity to get the right kind of traction of that approach at the international forum like the UNFCCC. So, and the supervisory body's responsibilities are also to, in fact, onboard a lot of accrediting agencies. So who, like as you mentioned about the relevance of monitoring and verification, because the better we are able to capture the movement of goods, we would also be able to understand to what contribution that transformation that is taken place at each and every step of the value chain is happening. So both Article 6.2 and 6.4 needs to be leveraged, particularly for India, where we might be in the process of looking for good capable methodologies for recycling might already be there or being deliberated at the international level. So it's all about leveraging it to see that how we can build in our internal carbon credit mechanism, or at the same time we can build it in under Article 6.2 and make it more bankable and commercially viable and attractive for the recycling sector.
Thank you, Shoiki. Harsh, my next question is to you. You work mostly with the steel sector. How do you see steel sector collaborating with recyclers to create bundled carbon projects or do carbon financing to increase the sourcing? Because we understand for steel sector, the circular economy is very difficult to achieve. So how do you see the role of steel industries and the recyclers through the carbon lens?
Thanks, Yash. Just before I answer that question, right, a little bit of context setting for the steel industry. You know, the government recently announced the green steel taxonomy, which essentially said that we are going to have green steel ratings for steel companies. It's a huge policy which is coming around. This is the first of a kind in the world, right? No other country has had the foresight and the ambition to actually put something like this onto paper and actually implement it. And by that, all steel players, they will have to conform to this standard where if their CO2 emissions are 1.6 tons of CO2 per ton of steel and below, they get rated 5-star. If it's between 1.6 and 2, they become 4-star. If it is between 2 and 2.2, they become 3-star. Above 2.2, you don't get rated at all. Now, how is this going to be used? The first use case of this is in GPP, which is Green Public Procurement. So the government has essentially said that the 25 million tons of steel which they consume or they procure every year, 37% of that will need to be procured from companies who have a rating like this, 3, 4, or 5, right? That's a starter. Now, many private sector players will also start conforming to these. Now, if I think about it from the steel players' perspective, how are they going to reduce their emissions? Hydrogen and carbon capture, they have some time, right? They have about 5 to 10 years to mature and become viable. Energy efficiency, yield improvement, etc., they're there, and they will create a 5% year-on-year improvement, right? When I come down to, and then you're left with two things. One is renewable energy. The other one is use of scrap. Renewable energy is already, I would say it's had its time. It's taken the last 10 years, and now it's mature. There's financing available, technology is available. It's cost positive and all of that. Finally, you're left with scrap. Now, and scrap is now scrap is becoming increasingly demanded. India is consuming about 30 million tons of steel scrap. It is projected to rise to about 60 million tons by 2030, or the next 5 to 6 years. Turkey, on the other hand, which is also a large scrap consumer, that will only grow about 10 to 15% in that much of time. So really, India is the hotbed of scrap. And that's why, this integrated approach is going to make a lot of sense. So companies like, for example, because this market, I would say, is still getting itself organized. A company like Tata Steel, with their plant in Ludhiana that they have set up, it's not just a steel plant, an electric arc one, but they've also set up, scrap processing facility. So they're setting up that entire value chain over there, because they have said that I will just set it up myself. Honda is trying to do something similar with a few foundries, few steel companies, but in a slightly more disaggregated way. So companies are looking to establish their own supply chains, but that is obviously not the best way to do it, because you can't have individual supply chains running everywhere. You will need integrated approaches, and and integrated approaches need monetization. That's where carbon credit really comes in. Now, I'll explain this with another example, and let's move from automotive to let's say construction. Supposing you're using scrap, it is going into electric arc furnace by a steel producer, and then it is getting consumed by a real estate developer. Now, there is monetization happening for low CO2 emissions at every step. For the scrap producer, they will have the ability to generate carbon credits once the CCTS, the new methodologies come out. So low emissions, they have monetized it through carbon credits. Now let's say it comes to a steel producer, and let's say that they're coming under CCTS. They have the option of generating carbon credits through it. That steel is getting consumed by the real estate sector, and that under the IGBC, or Indian Green Business Council, by the use of something like this, you can actually generate more floor area ratio, FAR, that is provided by each of the state governments in a different ratio. But you can actually monetize through that. Now, there are different forms of monetization, and there is also double counting happening in the middle. So the big question, I think, even before we get into an integrated approach, we have to. I can't imagine how we will combine this entire value chain into one integrated project. But what we will have to think about is the entire revenue stream which is being generated and who gets which share of the pie. To be able to do all of this, there is obviously an optimization and accounting which is needed, which can actually say that for this particular product, these are the ways in which sustainability can be monetized, whether it is through floor area ratio or carbon credits or under CCTS or whatever it is, right? So these kinds of systems will have to actually be set up. And to be able to do all of this, right, we will need an integrated system which is getting all of these things together. So that part is about monetization. There's obviously the part around traceability, which I talked about, because for any of these integrated projects, sustainability is key. So yes, to answer your question, to me, whether it is a bundled project or there are certain mechanisms and guidelines associated with low CO2 emissions products and where they will land up, so that we are not limiting the use by bundling of projects, but there is a certain guideline or a level which is actually set for each entity.
Thank you, Harsh. Yeah, thank you for the very informative panel discussion. I think we will go for the part B of the session right now. Yeah. Speaker? Yeah, so I will just ask, So I'll ask MRAI directors to just felicitate the speakers on the dais. I'll ask sir to give the trophy to Mr. Shouvik Bhattacharya. Mr. Rohit Garg, Mr. Sanmit Ahuja, Mr. Harsh Chaudhary. Thank you, sir. We'll just ask, can you just wait for one group photo, sir? Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, thank you very much for the opportunity of being part of this very interesting session. The first part of this session addressed a lot of technical issues, and this part of the session is mostly to try and align policies that will help the rapid implementation of the circular economy. This session is in two parts, really. We have a special address and a presentation in the first part, followed by a panel discussion. So without taking further time, may I now request Mr. P.K. Banerjee, Executive Director, SIAM, to kindly come and deliver the special address.
Very good afternoon, friends. It gives me immense pleasure and pride and honor to be part of always MRAI's International Conference. This is the 12th edition. Representing auto industry and standing at a time when India takes resolve to become a developed nation by 2047. 5 resolves which our Honorable Prime Minister articulated for all of us to take 5 pledges or resolve. First, we need to make India a developed nation by 2047. We need to shred the mindset of colonial legacy. We need to be united, and also we need to take pride in our roots, unity and sense of duty. All of these 5 resolve. One, sense of duty, was translated in the form of a pledge which Mr. Sanjay Bhai in the morning made all of us to take. And then when it comes to aspiring, rising India's march towards becoming a developed nation, I think the role of circular economy becomes very important. For auto industry, sustainable mobility is a goal, and India has decided that by 2070, we will be carbon neutral, net zero. Notwithstanding what other nations have decided, we are very clear that Life for Environment initiative of Honorable Prime Minister, traditional ethos of Indian culture itself always emphasized on the recycling. Without any regulations, without any standards, the way of life Indian civilization actually embraced for centuries are actually rooted in the recycled way of minimum resource consumption. And auto industry is very happy that under the dynamic leadership of our Prime Minister, we have extended producer responsibility related 6 important regulations notified, which has never happened in any part of the world. So this is a sense of pride which we are deriving out of the 5 resolve. So one is our resolve to become the developed nation. We have become the 3rd largest marketplace of automobile in the world. We have become the 5th largest economy in the world, and very soon we will be becoming 4th largest economy by overtaking Germany and Japan. And of course, we are very clear that unity among diversity is making India rise to its glorious past. No force in this earth can stop now with the kind of resolve we are marching ahead. And in this journey, automobile industry is contributing nearly 7% of GDP, and we are contributing more than actually 17.5 lakh crore in terms of revenue. So therefore, if you look at the overall contribution of Indian automobile industry into the national economy, this is a rising sector. And historically, last year we broke with 4.3 million four-wheelers. This year we have crossed that limit as well. So highest ever sale of four-wheelers will happen this year. Also, we are adding 20 million two-wheelers every year. So this is a kind of huge contribution towards economy, but in its wake, always it brings the challenge of sustainability. And with more than, I think 10 million vehicles are already ready to get end of life certification, I think the recycling of what I was seeing in this first session, if 1 ton of vehicle is recycled, 0.5 ton of contribution goes in terms of the recycled material. So therefore, of different types, 6 EPRs have been notified, starting from battery, electronic waste, plastic, rubber, and also end of that engine oil. Apart from the 6th one is end of life of vehicle. SIAM, together with MRAI, has been working very closely with the Ministry of Environment and Forest, Minister of Road Transport, as well as the Central Pollution Control Board. And we are very proud to tell that recently the final notification has been brought out, which is in line with the various submissions made by both the association. MRAI and SIAM, they are together having a very consultative rounds of meeting with government, and government is recognizing that MRAI and SIAM together needs to be heard, because our effort is to bring the unorganized sector, recyclers, collectors of parts, and other parallel economy stakeholders to be brought to the mainstream. And that's where we are recognizing that without impacting the socio-economic and techno-legal challenges which we encounter on ground, we are gradually marching towards bringing some sanity, some order, some kind of semblance of credence to the entire system, where we will be able to align the vision of Government of India with the contributions which MRAI stakeholders, members, and SIAM stakeholders and members will bring to the circular economy. Without further ado, I will take pride that many SIAM members and MRAI members, they have very specifically and curatively created areas of cooperation on e-waste management, plastic recycling, rubber reuse, repurposing, and also for the battery as well as the engine oil. We are looking forward for RVSF registered vehicle scrappage facilities to be created more and more in different parts of the country. Current RVSF, which is the organized sector attempt, is suffering from various challenges of tax input feed not coming, and also the differential regime of non-level playing field created by unorganized sector. That needs to be brought to some extent of convergence, so that more people can understand the importance of going through the organized sector recycling. Last but not the least, I think the communication and education is very important for common man, and that area is currently lacking. We have been struggling how to create standards, how to create regulations which are doable, acceptable, but in the hindsight we forgot that I think the success of the entire program will depend on mass movement, and mass movement can happen only when the people start accepting, respecting, and adopting the intended purpose of standards and regulations. And that's where the communication becomes the most important, education becomes the most important, awareness creation becomes the key to success. And that's where we today would like to pledge that together with MRAI, SIAM, and also the Government of India, we would be working together and take this movement forward where the secondary resource material utilization with the purpose of SIAM's motto, building the nation responsibly, and the sustainable mobility goals which Government of India has decided, and our commitment to international climate change mitigation, air pollution, management of cities, energy security, and also bringing the competitiveness in the manufacturing sector is the essence of our cooperation. So without further ado, as panelists are waiting, I would like to once again thank MRI management as well as the members of international community who are present here, that SIAM together with them would like to bring whatever positive contributions we can make so that the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam concept, one earth, one family and future, one future can be realized, which has been the G20 presidency slogan of Government of India. Thank you very much.
I'm sure the kind of discussion that Mr. Banerjee has made in the 5 minutes that he had today deserves a much larger round of applause. Kindly join me in thanking him for doing this. So this takes me to the second stage of this session. So without further ado, may I now request my panelists to come on stage, and then we'll request Mr. Maheshwari to join us. First, Mr. Rajesh Maheshwari, CEO, NABCB, may kindly come to the stage. He holds a master's degree in chemistry and MBA and has almost 3 decades of experience in quality assurance, management, industrial manufacturing, as well as on standards, technical regulations, accreditation, and conformity assessment. He has been working in area of accreditation from the initial years of NABL and accreditation systems in India since 1999, and is also an APAC peer evaluator for undertaking peer evaluations of other accreditation bodies. May I now also request Dr. Vijay Singhal, Director, Green Up Systems Private Limited, to join us on the stage. He is a graduate of BITS Pilani, a PhD from Malviya National Institute of Technology, Jaipur, superannuated from the Rajasthan State Pollution Control Board as Chief Environmental Engineer in March 2022. Presently, he is the Director of Green Up Systems Private Limited, which is a consulting organization offering consultancy in waste management and other environmental related fields. May I now request Mr. Abhishek Deshpande, co-founder and COO Recycle, an enthusiastic tech entrepreneur. We've been discussing various things, including very interesting issues on sustainability. Recycle was founded with the objective of providing an integrated digital platform for efficient waste and recycling management. He was already awarded the Business Week Young Entrepreneur Award 2020 and the most influenced sustainability leaders of India in 2019. Lastly, but not the least, may I request Mr. Ullas Parlikar, Director MRAI, who is a global consultant for waste management, circular economy, industrial symbiosis, policy advocacy, AFR, and co-processing. He has work experience of 38 years. He founded a new circular economy initiative named Industrial Symbiosis for Circular Economy, ISCE. He presently serves as the Director of MRAI. For this session, we kickstart the session with a scintillating presentation from Mr. Rajesh Maheshwari, CEO, NABCB. May I now request Mr. Rajesh Maheshwari to take the proceedings forward. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Namaskar. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. So let me first thank MRAI for inviting us to this platform or for sharing information with you all. And it's a short presentation and with more of information here, but we can always connect after this meet. So I was thinking, and as you look, our country, India, is historically I would say, we have always been adopting sustainable practices, and whether it was from the farm or food or in our own homes. So it was all sustainable practices that we adopted. And today we are all talking about sustainability, circular economy, and how does we come into play there. In the previous session, you were hearing about uh, carbon credits, verification, standards, regulations, all those things. And this is all part of the quality infrastructure which a country needs for any sector or across sectors, I would say, and specifically in this case for sustainability and circular economy. So how does we, as an accreditation body, has a role in this whole ecosystem? And with this short presentation, you'll get to know the basic elements of the quality infrastructure and how do we support different sectors of industry. Okay, so as you can see, we are the national accreditation system established by the government, and that is to assure not only quality, but in today's term, sustainability. How do we support recycling of waste and regulatory compliance and facilitate trade? So this is just an introductory slide, and you can see all sectors. So lots of recycling is being done across sectors, whether it is from the metal sector, paper, or even building and construction. So these are data which is available in public domain. But just to tell you and reinforce the whole objective is today the natural resources are scarce. We have to sustain ourselves with the resources that we have. And it's very, very important that we recycle, reuse these resources to the extent possible, and to make our economy as a circular economy, and use all those sustainable practices in our daily life, in our industry, in our all our practices that we do. So this is again, you can see the e-waste recycling is increasing, and you can see trends in different sectors. Those things are increasing. And there are, of course, gaps in the e-waste management in terms of lack of standards, regulations, how do we operationalize things. So lots of gaps are there. But now if you look at the whole ecosystem, the quality infrastructure in India, for any sector, for any industry, you need some standards and regulations, you need some measurements which are traceable to international standards, and then you need some conformity assessment and ways to assess those conformity assessment bodies. So I'm using a term conformity assessment which is widely used for certification, inspection, testing, calibration, and all those conformity assessment that's needed by the industry. And in this slide you can see how the quality infrastructure is established in the country, with the BIS being the national standard body. There are sectoral regulators, for example, Bureau of Energy Efficiency, for example, CPCB, and of course, the National Physical Laboratory is the National Metrology Institute in the country, and which is custodian of all those physico-mechanical, electrotechnical standards. I hope there is nothing to worry about. Okay, now just to give you where India stands on. So there is a rankings which is done every 2 years by Global Quality Infrastructure Index. And that's a Europe, in fact, Germany-based independent organization which ranks all the economies around the world. And it's about over 185 economies that's been evaluated on the Quality Infrastructure Index. Primarily, if you look at 3 components of quality infrastructure, we are on an overall scale of 10 as a country, but on accreditation we stand at rank 5. So that's what we can see is we are standing on these elements of conformity assessment in the leading countries around the world. Now, we were created by the government not only to establish the accreditation infrastructure in the country, also we had the mandate to promote quality across industry sectors. So this organization was established almost 25 years back, 27 years back to be precise. And the whole mandate was to help industry comply with standards, regulations, and those, the industry should be able to demonstrate compliance through the accredited means. So this is how we are structured, and we are referring here in this two very prominent accreditation boards. One is NABCB and one is NABL, and which deals with the accreditation of the conformity assessment bodies, whether it's for the testing laboratories or calibration laboratories or the certification bodies, inspection bodies, and more prominently the validation verification bodies. So in the previous panel discussion was happening on validation verification using AI. But of course, technologies are technologies. They cannot replace humans and the entities which are going to do that. This is a whole ecosystem which has been created around the world, and it's actually based on competence. So when we say accreditation, we assess the technical competence of these bodies providing this conformity assessment. So the whole ecosystem is based on developing and assessing competence. And even as an accreditation body, we have to demonstrate our competence to the international bodies. And only after that we have successfully demonstrated, we become signatories to the international multilateral mutual recognition arrangements. So you will see more. I'll just skip on. And this whole terminology or the element of accreditation is coming in different global regulations, whether you talk about WTO TBT agreement under Article 6, wherein the use of accreditation is mentioned, or you talk about the United Nations Economic Commission for Europe. So all these different regulations, and most of the economies around the world, they have the regulations on accreditation and conformity assessment. So this is what the mandate of this specific board, NABCB, and we provide accreditation to the certification, inspection, validation, verification bodies. So in short, these three elements. And you look at, if you can see, I don't know whether you are able to see on your screen, for certification bodies which are certifying entities for various management systems, for example, like 14,001, which is environment management systems, or 50,001, which is energy management systems. So I have highlighted few of these things. I know it's small letters, but still I think you will be able to see. Whether it is for inspections across industry sectors, inspections for any kind of facility or any kind of process. We are also giving accreditation to the product process certification bodies, and also the most important in this context is accreditation to the validation verification bodies. And these are all done as per the international standards. The standards are mentioned here. So there are many schemes, international schemes, which we give accreditation, and you will see in the next slide. We are recognized as a national accreditation body in many schemes, by many scheme owners around the world. If I have to name something very relevant to this discussion is the ICAO CORSIA, the International Civil Aviation Organization for the Carbon Offsetting Reduction Scheme. In international aviation, that's a regulatory scheme wherein all regulators in the civil aviation are members of that body. For example, like VERA, we were talking about the VERA, the VCS standard, the gold standard. So all those, if you look at sustainability, like organic GOTS is there in textiles. So all these scheme owners, they recognize us as one of the prominent bodies, and we give accreditation for the requirements of these schemes. Even SERI is there, SERI R2, which is Sustainable Electronics Recycling International, is there as one of the schemes. And in fact, for SERI, we are one of the two ABs recognized around the world. One is in US and one is in India. You can see how we work with different scheme owners around the world to facilitate internationally recognized and accepted accredited conformity assessment within the country. And this is something about SERI, the R2 standard, which is, I suppose some of you and most of you would be knowing about, is one of the major schemes for certification of e-waste recyclers. This is another scheme which I was referring to, is verification of carbon credits or carbon trading that's been used widely in the world, and we give accreditation for such schemes. So as a accreditation body, or as the accreditation has been given, we cover every sector. So every sector that you can think of is getting impacted by NABCB or NABCB accreditation or the accredited conformity assessment done by our accredited bodies. So how do we are part of the international system? the two international bodies, International Accreditation Forum and the International Laboratory Accreditation Corporation, and the regional body, APAC. We are members of it. We are signatories to their MRAs or MLAs, and which provides us international recognition, acceptance, and also to the accredited reports and certificates issued by our accredited bodies. So these are some of the things, and this is with one single motto: accredited once, accepted everywhere, or I would say tested, inspected, or certified once, accepted everywhere. So it actually helps reduce the technical barriers to trade, or it helps in ease of doing business for the industry. So this is some regional bodies. For example, in Europe it is the EA, European Accreditation, and all those regional bodies are recognized regions of these two international bodies. So this is how the whole system works. Every link in this chain is getting evaluated. Even the regional body is getting evaluated. So everyone has to demonstrate competence, and that's the beauty of the system, that you need to demonstrate competence before you are recognized or before you are given accreditation, or you become the signatory of the MLAs or MRAs. And that's where the industry needs to also take benefit of it, and also use either the international standards or the internationally harmonized standards for anything and everything that they do, including in sustainability and for any waste recycling or reuse. So this is what I just wanted to show is most part of the world is impacted. You can see all those blue ones. These two are the for the two bodies, and you can see around 95%, more than 95% of the global GDP is impacted by the work being done by these bodies, or the members of these bodies, or the bodies which are accredited by these members. Within the country, we are recognized by almost all the government bodies, departments, and entities, including the various technical regulators. For example, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency uses our accredited bodies for the star labeling program. BIS, which is the national standards body, and also a kind of a regulator for many products, they use our accredited inspection bodies for the factory inspections or the BI licenses. Even we were in talks recently, the CCTS, the B scheme, which has come in, so they are going to use our accredited validation verification bodies for ensuring compliances as per the schemes. So this is how the whole ecosystem works around the world and within the country, and there are benefits, and there are two sites given here. I'm sure that this presentation will be shared. These two sites give you different success stories in different economies, in different industry sectors, how those economies and those industry sectors have benefited from the use of accreditation or accredited conformity assessment bodies. So just the way forward, we need to have a policy change at the national level, so that we have policies which support this whole ecosystem. In these policies, we should also build how the national accreditation system is to be leveraged. And I was discussing some, many of the things are still in a gray area, and we need to document it in terms of the national policies and how the things have to be. And of course, mandating the conformity assessment through the accredited bodies, and upgrading the national standards. That's also an area wherein we need to align with the international standards. And of course, skilled professionals, or maybe certification of skilled professionals. That's also an area wherein we work for. So I just wanted to wrap up this presentation so that we have some discussion in the panel, and it was just to ignite how the ecosystem works. So we were just looking for a lot of things about validation, verification, standards, regulations, conformity assessment, and all those would be, I thought, would be useful for the participants here. Thank you. Thank you for giving us an opportunity.
Thank you for that wonderful insight into one of India's most premier institutions. And I think we have learned a lot from your presentation on the role that it has and the potential it has towards contributing towards the overall growth of the circular economy in India. My basic point, I'll just take 1 or 2 minutes because we are running out of time, but just to give it some context. From the day-long discussion that we have had, the recycling industry, like every other industry, has to have some alignment between policies. And these are the technology policy, the toolkits, the tax and trade at the highest level. Just to give you an example, some years ago, when the government had decided to set up maintenance and repair overall organizations in India, it brought in the trade policy, which was the FDI of 100%. But nothing happened. Nothing happened. Nobody entered it, and our MRO facilities were as it was earlier. But once the government realized that, it started aligning its tax policies with the trade policy. What happened was the GST on MRO activities came down from 18% to 5%, FDI went up to 100%, customs duties and on spare parts which are required for doing MRO activities were exempted, and there was also a tax credit available from direct taxes. So these two linkages between the trade policy and the tax policy spurred the Indian MRO organization to new heights. And it was a new business. The recycling industry is also on the same pathway. We are at the initial stages, though we've been working in the industry for some years. But the real galvanization of this industry is now happening. And it is in this context that all these effective policies that we make should have an element that addresses trade, tax, technology, and tariffs. All of these should be looked at holistically. So today in the morning, we had some discussions on technologies. In the afternoon session also, we discussed technologies. But today we want to discuss in this particular session on specific issues relating to policies that will help bring in the transition to circular economy quickly. And these can be on a variety of subjects, from non-tariff barriers, incentivizations, PLI schemes, circular design for products, integration of the CE with NDCs, and so on and so forth. So I'm not going to take too much time. I'll just go back to my seat and I'll ask my panel to contribute to this discussion, as they are more knowledgeable than I am on this subject. So my first question in this regard is, after I put this scheme together of, as I say, these 4 T's, my first question from here, I'll begin from the left with Ulasji, with you. How can the tax policy and the regulatory and compliance policy be integrated to promote faster growth of the circular economy? I think that's a key question. We seem to be moving on 2 different lines of thought. So, how do you think we could do, what sort of tax incentives could be there for R&D, for use of secondary materials? Should there be some non-tax barriers through larger compliance requirements for polluting products? And, how do we have a carbon statement of the product for differential pricing? What kind of incentivization from a tax and trade perspective would you like to discuss? This question is common to all of you, so I will take one by one all your views. Please spend 2 minutes or 3 minutes on each response.
Sure. Thank you, Samadhar sir. Any policy, when it has to become successful and effective, the principles have to be aligned with it. The practices also have to be aligned with it. And that's where, I would like to state few aspects which I feel are very important for the policies to become effective and foster the circular economy that we are talking about. The first is, when in circular economy, you need the material, the scrap, the waste, whatever that which is going to transform or become a part of the circular economy. And there are 2 considerations with which this will happen. One is the economic consideration, other is a policy mandate. So suppose if you have, when I talk about economy, this thing you have, let's take paper, let's take metals. There is a supply chain process where, people are purchasing this material from the households or from the individuals, and there is a big supply chain process which ends up to the industry where the recycling is going to happen. That's the economic methodology. Now, government will have to look at it and see for the other materials, how this has to be implemented. And there are various models with which it can be done. We don't have time to do that, to discuss that. The other is the policy mandates. For example, the municipal waste, the electronic waste, the hazardous waste, the biomedical waste. They all also can be brought into the circular economy, and the mandates actually bring that into the marketplace. So for waste oil, for example, there's a mandate which has come now. You look at some other materials, there's a mandate which is there. So we have to therefore bring in those mandates. The landfill tax, if we talk about, is another mandate where, you don't allow the material to go into the landfill at all. So mandates of that kind also have to be, implemented. Second is awareness of technologies, recycling technologies. There's very little understanding about that in anywhere if you look at. There are no books, there are no courses, there are no workshops, nothing is seen as far as recycling is concerned. I think there's a need, the government has to look at and implement those particular aspects. In terms of mandates for using recycled material, that's also a very important aspect for growing the circular economy, which has to be implemented. And then we are talking about industrial symbiosis, how can one waste become a resource for someone else? This needs to be mapped properly. There have to be, a lot of work can be done by the academic institutions here, and the whole process can be kind of sensitized and financed by the government to implement. So there are a variety of aspects, I think I have 10 or 15 things which are listed down. I don't want to take all the things myself. I want my other panelists also to look at it. But yes, these are very important aspects by way of which we can bring the material into the marketplace and create an economy around that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Maheshwari, your thoughts are basically alignment between tools, tech, trade and tax, and how does your institution can contribute towards conceiving some sort of a marriage between these four elements that will finally go into the circular economy?
Okay, so for anything to be successful, it needs to have a structured approach. So while the national policies are being set up by the government, and it might be on specific elements on sustainability and circular economy, I fully agree that there has to be some incentivization. For example, if a particular sector or electronics industry is setting up its own recycling or waste collection supply chain, and the industry needs to be incentivized. For example, if they are using renewable energy, they get incentivized. So there is a lot of, tax benefits or incentivization which can be given to the industry. But I will also come to the consumers. For example, consumers are the main users of these materials and these. And if the incentivization can also be done at a consumer level, it will also help out. For example, if I will give you another example wherein if the consumer is adopting solar energy and it is connected to the grid, so whatever energy is consuming for his own purpose, and then he's giving back that energy to the grid, what might be little energy, but then he's helping the state, consuming less energy, is helping the state to provide more energy, and he's getting paid for that energy he gives to the grid. So some schemes needs to be developed wherein the consumers are also incentivized. They get encouraged, they get motivated to use all these schemes. And of course, last and the most important point, the awareness, the education about all these things available to consumers and to the industry. There are lots of MSMEs, they may not be aware of what they need to do. So lots of education and awareness needs to be done also. Thank you.
Thank you. I think some good points there on having a systemed approach towards developing the circular economy. That's pretty interesting. Dr. Singhal, sir, you've been working on integrated resource recovery parks for some time. And in the context of what we've been discussing this whole day on trade, tax, technology, and tools, can you tell us how is this IRPP shaping up in Jaipur, and does it include any of the issues that we've been discussing this morning? And maybe you can enlighten the audience on the status of this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Sudhi Sahab. Integrated waste recycling park is a new concept in recycling where we try to co-locate all the recyclers of various waste streams at a single industrial area so that they can exploit the synergies into the various waste streams. Suppose you are a e-waste recycler, you generate, the plastics and also, glass and other things. So where the plastic will go. You have to look for some other recycler or set up unit for yourself. Both things are very difficult logistically and also need a lot of finance. So the better way is that you have somebody in your backyard who can recycle the plastic you are generating, the glass you are generating, metal you are generating. So in a way that in a integrated resource recovery park or a integrated recycling a park, we try to see that the waste is exchanged among the various recyclers. At the boundary of the recycling park, there is no waste or little waste which goes out of the park. That is the basic idea. And apart from this, the exchange, which is the backbone of the park, we also try to develop the entire ecosystem for recycling. The way of metal, testing laboratories, then we also have, training facilities, skill development, a center, a storage yard for the raw materials. So whatever a recycle need, it is available there. There is a strong exchange of knowledge among the recyclers and the new ideas which come up every day. So in a way, a recycling park or integrated recycling park is something new in the sense that we try to develop the entire ecosystem for recycler at a single place with more emphasis on exchange of the waste stream so that the efficiency of recycling increases, the profitability of recycling increases, which is very important. Now, GIZ India, they were very happy to support. In fact, they did the entire technical feasibility studies, also developed the conceptual model for this park and did the planning along with IIT, Kharagpur and TERI. This park is being developed in a 48-hectare land near Jaipur, village Tholai on Ramgarh Andhi Road. And there are 100 plots for various sizes, starting from 1,000 meters square to 10,000 meters square. And the development work of the park has already started. Roads have been, built up. And, out of 100, actually, this park was conceptualized by Rajasthan Pollution Control Board. Technical support was given by GIZ. But the development of the park is being done by RICO, it is a state agency for industrial development. Now, RICO is not allotting the plots, they are auctioning the plots. So there is an open auction by which you need to, take the land. And that's a little bit, is a matter of a concern in the sense, suppose you are a recycler, you need a land of 10,000 meters square, and you are not able to get in auction, and you get a smaller land and get land in two different places, you can't do it. And this is also resulting into many of the, recyclers which don't intend to set up, units, just want to purchase the land, just like, any other park where to do. And this is become a slightly, that's why the progress is a bit slow. In, 3 rounds of auctions, only 9 plots have been, allotted, and work has been done only in one park. One recycler started the work on the site. Though RICO has done the development, they have done all the road work and all the electricity and all that has been done, but still it is not really taken off the way it should have been really done. And then there's no incentive package built up with the park. As you said, recycling is a risky business, not a business which is well established, everybody knows, and that you can earn money like this. So you need support from the government in terms of policy as well as the financial incentives. Unless that comes, really implementing the concept on the ground is a bit difficult. But then it's the first park of the country in Jaipur. I hope it will shape up beautifully in times to come. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure it will shape up well. So from the first 3 panelists, we have heard a concept about symbiosis, a structured approach. We also looked at what infrastructure can go towards creating a circular economy. So Abhishek, Mr. Abhishek Deshpande, it's your turn to talk about how technology-driven solutions can look at how these policies are formulated. If you can spend 2 or 3 minutes on it, please.
Sure, sir. So, Government of India has introduced multiple innovative policies. A lot of new infrastructures are coming up. So, for scalable implementation of these policies, a success is needed. And what I see, we are just talking about, or so far spoken about the demand. And we heard Mr. Banerjee mentioning about there is no consistent supply. So any recycling ecosystem has to be successful. They need a consistent supply and the quality supply. So we at Recycle, what we feel is that there is a lot of supply chain innovation needs to be done. And technology can do that. Technology can create a digital ecosystem which can be put on the physical ecosystem. So you can consider as a physical ecosystem. What technology can do, it's no need to explain again because I keep it very simple. Like today, if you can get ice cream in 10 minutes, or you can order groceries, you can get medical reports, everything can happen. So technology is we are living in a new era where technology can give a lot of data insights, a lot of artificial intelligence usage can give lot of faster implementation of these policies, because if we don't have a manual dependencies, like there can be AI sorters can be deployed, and we can completely create an ecosystem where complete traceability and transparency is there. We are talking about unlocking the carbon market. To unlock the carbon market, data is important, and the decisions, all the calls, all the data generation will happen with the use of the technology. If you are able to deploy technology at every touch point and able to gather, you will constantly able to review the impact of policy also, because it is going to be a real time. What is happening now, we are making the policy, but we are not able to gauge what is the execution on the ground level. So if you build such ecosystem, which is a digital, which is a real time, then you will able to understand where we are standing as a country. And there are a lot of digital solutions can be done. And I definitely wanted to talk about a digital DRS, which we have done on the scale. We are the only country at this moment who is going to the vegetable vendor, scanning the QR code and doing the money transfer. Nobody else is able to do it on that scale. We have to feel proud, and we have to really figure it out, such technologies and integration of such scalable, successful technologies to solve other problems. So that's the DRS for us, like what we are doing in the multiple states. We are the only company who's advocating about a usage of QR code in the DRS system, because there is a well acceptance and awareness in the country like India, where other companies who are Norwegian companies are talking about a barcode which is a age-old things for them. We don't wanted to borrow, pest, whatever working in other countries. We wanted to Indianize. So whatever the ecosystem, digital, technological ecosystem we have built, we have to start extrapolating or start reusing to scale these policies. That's what I feel. And we have proven the world that we can do. If you can buy the vegetables, if you can buy the even jewelry with the QR code. And happy to see other day in the Bharat Mobility, all the Mahindra EVs were having unique QR codes. So that's the Bharat talking and proving that we are way ahead, and we can create the disruption in the supply chain. And if the supply chain disruption if you get the quality supply, all these policies will be successful, because demand will be fulfilled by the positive supply. And that's where technology can be game changer and X factor, what I feel.
Thank you, Abhishek. So this should bring me to the end of this session, but if there are any questions from the audience, I'd be happy to take them on. But whilst you're thinking about your questions, may I also introduce this magazine. It's the Material Recycling Magazine, one of the finest magazines on material recycling by MRAI. For the community, I strongly recommend all of you to kindly subscribe to this magazine. There's a wealth of information here. Put your thoughts into it. And this is a flagship magazine for our community. Do contribute to it. If there are any questions, we can take that. Yes, please. Kindly identify yourself and then ask a brief question.
Hello. So I work on the tire recycling sector.
wherein we work
Can you
on
give
this-
your name and...
Sai Teja from Sri Sai Industries. We work on tire recycling, particularly steel scrap generated from tire recycling. So I just want to understand, so there are two types in tire recycling, where one is a polluting sector where it's called pyrolysis, one is shredding where it is cleaner. So when we look at the source, how is it identified, how do they categorize these two generations and then again accounted for in circularity or carbon markets is what I wanted to understand. Based on the generation, if some generations could be greener, some generations, although recycled, but in a polluting way, how are these cases addressed? If anybody can talk about it.
Anybody would like to respond? Or I can...
If I have understood your question, you're asking if there's a waste which is getting generated in a non-clean environment and there's a waste which is getting generated in a cleaner environment, would there be an economic difference or market acceptability difference? It will be, of course, but let's remember that the market is not dependent on this material alone. It depends on the end use. And the price for that gets defined there. And the cost associated in the entire process from the state at which it is now to the state at which it is to be taken up, that would decide the methodology. It is also possible that, something which is not so good, not so clean, is cheaper to convert it into an acceptable product compared to one which is generated in a cleaner environment, but does not have, so much of a market or price or acceptability. So I would consider that, it's not necessarily dependent on the way in which it is getting generated. It's more dependent on the final use that we are looking at.
Anybody else would like to add something on this? Would you like to say something? No, I can. Okay, so this brings us to the end of this session. I hope we've been able to communicate the 4 T's that is required for introduction of a circular economy early. That is tools, trade, technology, and tax. All of them have to be addressed in, as we say, a symbiotic manner, in some structured approach, using technology and the right infrastructure. With this, let me thank my panelists, and I would request all my audience here to kindly join me in thanking our panelists for this session.